So to me, I know there's a difference when love is being the the lens in which I see life. Like, I know that now for a fact, man. Like, it's not even a belief anymore. Like, for me, my beliefs are up for grabs. Everything I believe in, that means I'm still learning and researching and trying to know it's true. But there are a few things that I know. I know mind, thought, consciousness is how we have our human experience. And because I know that, it's just like knowing when I walk out the house, the air is going to be there for me to breathe. I know if I can close down the content of my thinking, I'm going to see the humanity in the human being that's standing in front of me. I know that. I know it's in there. I don't care what they're arguing. I don't care how vicious they're saying it. I don't care how disrespectful it's coming out. I know that if I can shut down my thinking, I could see it. And if I could see it, I could smile at it and it could smile back at me.
Welcome to the Rich Life Realization Podcast. This is your host, Rich Life. Yes, that's really my name. And we're going to explore powerful conversations with phenomenal guests in order to spark realizations and insights that guide you toward enriching your life. I have a very special guest here with me today. It's Rob Cook. He is the man, the myth, the legend. He's a speaker and a coach. He primarily works with PTSD and traumatic experiences. And he was in the service. He's a retired combat veteran who turned to life coaching. And he has a certification through the Super Coach Academy. And now he helps and serves people from the 3 principles understanding. And he's just this congenial guy. You have this picture on your website that I feel like is like you. It's the picture of the heart.
Yeah.
With a heart, and then you're like this.
Yeah. I didn't know that picture. I just saw the heart. Again, talk about perceptions. I just saw the heart, so I love the shirt. Well, I never knew the heart was actually inside of the state of Ohio.
Oh.
So the red around, the red blob, so to speak, is the shape of Ohio. And the heart is just in that. So people were, when I put that picture up, people were like, hey, I thought you were from Alabama. I was like, I am. It was like, well, why do you have an Ohio shirt? I was like, I have an Ohio shirt. What are you talking about? It was like, the heart. The heart is in Ohio. I was like, oh, well, I guess I got an Ohio shirt then.
Have you ever even been to Ohio?
Yeah, I went once.
Oh, okay.
Twice. Yeah.
And did you heart it?
I loved it. Yeah, it was. It worked. You're right. It worked. Yeah, but I have some real good friends down there doing great work. Davita and Steve, both 3 principal practitioners, and so yeah, when they were the ones speaking with me about
it. They thought you were shouting out to them.
Probably. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was like, no, I wasn't. It was the heart. Yeah. It was a heart. Okay, it was a heart.
Well, cool, man. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have a fun conversation. We can talk about movement and trauma, whatever else comes up.
Oh, yeah.
Have some fun.
Oh, I love it, man.
Yeah.
You run, I'll follow. Yeah, you run, I'll follow. You know?
Well, and so I had kind of a cool moment where I saw the videos. It was the first 3 videos of where Michael was talking to you. It was like an intensive that he did with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, was that like your first introduction to the principle?
Very first one.
What?
Yeah, the very first one, and that's what the project was. That was his intent. He was, Michael is in my mind brilliant. He's a genius.
Yeah.
And what he was looking to do was find a way to really showcase how simple it was to have a conversation about this understanding, especially for us that are now coaches. And so what he did was he came up with an idea of having me and him sit in one room and just have a conversation while live streaming it into the next room, which was full of the 50 coaches that were there for certification. And so they watched us on a screen in the next room. And it was kind of like surreal in a little bit that it was just me and him in the room, but every now and then I can hear them laugh, or I can hear them gasp, or I can hear them go, oh, you know, and you feel kind of like this. It was weird, but it was loving in a sense, you know. And so, yeah, that was my first time ever hearing anything about this. I knew him though. We met at a dinner party previously, and all I knew about him really was just he was a cool dude. We talked all night long, and I think the next thing I noticed about him was none of the shit that I was saying scared him, and that made me curious. Like that made me, because most people that I would tend to talk about PTSD type issues with, or I would talk about growing up as an inner city kid, or even how, you know, I still got nieces and nephews, or, you know, that are involved in gang activity or drug activity or whatever. You get a response, you get some type of, you know, reflection from that person that what I just said was wrong or kind of inappropriate or not right. And I didn't get any of that with him. Shit was just landing. It almost seemed like he wanted to know more and more about it. And so it was set. The setting was set for a beautiful conversation. And I used to say that intensive changed my life, but I realized my life actually changed at the dinner party, because the dinner party is where I got curious enough to hear.
Yeah. It's when you first hear that. Yeah. It's almost like I kind of talk about it, how it's you're not hearing with your intellectual mind, you're hearing with this knowing. And that can kind of scare some people.
Oh yeah, scared the shit out of me. Like, I'm just to be honest, it scared the shit out of me. I mean, I fought it for a while, because at that point, living from the outside in, everything that he was pointing to in that instance was feeling like was being stripped or taken away from me, even though it was shit I didn't like, even though it was stuff I didn't want, even though it was bad, you know, experiences and bad feelings. I still felt like it was mine. Don't take it away from me. It's who I am. Because if I don't have this hurt, this pain, this suffering, then who am I, in a sense? So it was a rough. It wasn't like we are now. I can tell you that much. You know, now our friendship, our relationship is so significantly better. But at first, he'd be like, "Hey, you want to grab a coffee?" Like, "No, sir." You know, he'd be like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, you had asked me to read something, and I haven't read it yet, sir. So I have not done my part, and I can't ask you to." It was very robotic. Again, I was just coming out of the military at that time, so he was just like, "I just wanted coffee, bro." Like, you know. And so I remember when it cracked, and I texted him, was like, "Oh, we're good now. I got it. We're good. Like, we're good. You know, we're good." And then that started, you know, the mentorship and the real guidance, because I can hear him at that point. I used to say, you know, because of how significant the change was in me, I had placed him on a pedestal so high that I really couldn't hear what he was saying, because he was so far up. He was so different than me. He had attained so much more than me. So I saw this large gap between us as human beings, and that made it very difficult to hear what he was saying. And not to him, because he would always reinforce to me, we're just saying, he would always, I mean, he's that guy to me. But I remember when the pedestal came down, and the pedestal came down, but the respect grew. And it was like, I could hear him now. Now I could really see where he was pointing. Then I started getting it, so to speak, you know, in my own way. And I love a lot of things about him, but one in particular was him always reinforcing I had to do it in my voice. I had to do it through my experience. I couldn't try to repeat what he said. I couldn't parrot him, in a sense. I couldn't just take the words he said and throw them on paper and make it sell. It was like, no, it's got to be your voice. it's got to be you. And that's one of the many reasons I love him so much. Because he could have cloned me in a sense, with ill intentions. He could have taken my admiration and respect for him and channel it into some cult-like activity if he wanted, and I would have been up for it, because again, to me, it showed me something I'd never seen before, but when he didn't do that, I think was more telling of why it really landed in my heart, more so than in my mind. Like, honestly, bro, like, seriously, I don't even understand this intellectually. Like, it doesn't make sense to me intellectually.
Yeah.
So I really just follow my heart on it. I really just go with what I'm feeling like. And that doesn't always mean I get it right. That means the learning curve is there, but it's proven for me to be the way I want to share in this world.
It's funny, my wife she sometimes says that I'm in a cult, and she's
yeah, I mean, I
like,
can see that.
No, and I'm like, and then I try and argue with her about it, and she's like, see, it's
that's what you do when you're in a cult. You argue about somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember the first time somebody told me, they said to me, they sent me an article.
Yeah.
And it was I think it was an article on Reddit or something, and it said something about 3 Principles being a cult, and it was just an article, right?
Oh yeah.
And I started laughing because the first thought came to my head was like, man, I've had one hell of a life, because I don't know many people who've been in a cult and a gang. Like, like so it was like, dang, that's really cool. Like, I've been in a gang and in a cult. Like, you don't have those, And
yeah.
So my point of that is I never really let it bother me in that sense. Again, to believe it's a cult is an outside in perception of it. What I know about it is, when people don't understand something, there must come some type of classification for it.
Yeah.
So even the religious leaders from time to time have been accused of being cultic, in a sense. And it's because of when you begin to share something that's so contradicting to a way of life that you've thought to be true forever, you can't do anything but categorize it as wrong until you understand it better.
Yeah. And I think one of the differences too is that, especially in the Principles, it's harder to make it into that, like, I have all of the knowledge, because it's really pointing you to your own wisdom from the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. But that's not, I don't hear that when I think I got to know all the answers. And so that's where the feeling for me comes into play. That's where even the way I say set up in teachings, one of the things I love about the way I share is I'm only going to talk from my lived experience, and it's going to be the whole experience. So there are beautiful, successful stories I tell. And then there are stories that aren't as beautiful, aren't as clean. They talk about times that I have silenced other voices, and times I have extended some hatred. And I talk about those in particular, not to glorify, but to say, I am just like you are in the moment, and it was this understanding that cleared that. And it's the understanding also that makes it intentional that I am inclusive. That's an intent for me. I make sure of that now, just because I know what lack of inclusivity does. I ensure that I'm loving and respectful, because I know when the lack of that is present, what it does.
Yeah.
It's an intent. So yeah, I can see how people get it, and that makes perfect sense, honestly, to me. But I also understand once they see it, they won't feel that way.
That intellectual thinking clears.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, because my wife too she's a therapist. She works a lot with trauma. And so I talk with her about the outside in understanding, and she's very scientifically minded. She doesn't like to hear all the woo woo.
Yeah. Which makes sense, right? Is languaging.
Yeah.
I recently just did a talk, and at first I was a kind of bit nervous because it was the first time that I've been paired with a psychiatrist I didn't know.
Yeah.
A psychiatrist, therapist, or psychologist. I don't know which one he was, but he was a doctor, medical professional, who spoke about trauma. And so it was very interesting because he did speak in clinical terms.
Mm-hmm.
And while I understood what it was he was saying, I talked about it from my experience, and it clicked for us. We had a very good conversation about things. And then when we got off, he said, actually, you made me think about a few things, because when he talked about PTSD in a sense, and he did have some inside out understanding. So I don't want to make it seem like he was die hard the other way, but he said the way that I was explaining it, saying that that's the system doing what it's supposed to do. There's one part of it that makes it a disorder. That's when I can't. So for instance, loud noises and things like that. Well, given the environments that I've been in, loud noises do get my immediate attention. Problem was, when I suffered with the disorder, was once I identified that loud noise was no longer a threat, I still stay in a heightened threat position. So now I do still look, and I've been out the military since 2017, but a loud noise, I still look. Difference though is once I recognize it was just a box that fell, I come back to now. There is no feelings of the trauma traveling with me at that point. So for me, I'm okay with having PTS, post-traumatic stress. All right, cool. Got it. But the disorder is when I cannot recognize the difference in when it happened to me in memory and past versus what's happening to me presently at the moment.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm trying to get people to see the difference in for me. I want you. Yeah. I want you, if you've been sexually assaulted before, I want you, the hairs on the back of your neck to raise up if you find yourself in a dark alley. Yeah. Given that you've experienced something like that, you should be, the mind is saying, pay very close attention to what's happening right now, because last time we were in this, we got harmed.
Yeah.
So Rob, pay attention. Beep, beep, beep. It's buzzing, it's beeping. I've just mislabeled those things, so to speak. I've misappropriated the funds, so to speak. I thought that is what I was supposed to be paying attention to, rather than look. It's saying, no, these are your high beams. Look in front of you. Make sure no danger is really existing. And when it's not there, cool. I get on with the day. I get on with the movement. Even with triggers. People say, oh, I'm often triggered. Well, cool. What I know about guns is you have to pull the trigger. The trigger just doesn't automatically shoot. You have to pull it.
It can be loaded.
Yes, it can be loaded and everything, but you still have to pull it. So again, if you are triggered by noises, if you are triggered by stories and things like that, all that is saying is your mind is alarming you to pay attention to the present moment to ensure what happened to us in the past doesn't happen again.
Yeah. You can tell me if and take an ocean full of salt and out of this. You can tell me if I'm way off, because I feel like I've experienced a little bit of trauma like 6 months ago, and you're not supposed to compare traumas or anything like that. But I'm kind of seeing it with that three principles lens in this way, that it's kind of like this radar system, and it's always scanning. So it's always scanning, and it's always scanning for safety. And what it does, because that system is faster than the intellectual mind. It was designed that way so that we could react faster in our primitive minds. We can run without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And we don't have to say, oh, there's a tiger, I must now go run. So it's is designed to be fast, and it's designed to have kind of like this huge radar kind of alert system, and it alerts quickly, but it also dissipates quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And when we experience trauma in our lives, it can turn up the sensitivity of this radar system, and now it's starting to pick up birds instead of planes.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
very good. That's a very, very good analogy. That's a very good, because so my job in the military was protection of nouns, people, places, things, right? But when I taught nuclear security, we were not on the sites. So I had a team, and we would live in the middle of 10 nuclear silos, right? And our house would be kind of centrally located between them. And so first team works the first 12 hours a day, and you stay at this house for 5 full days. And then you go home for 5 days, and the next team handles it for 5 days. So that's your shift. And since we weren't on site, we had to respond to alarms when they came. And we would get to the alarm site, armed, run through our protocols, everything. And then you'll see the rabbit run across. Well, that's who triggered the alarm. And it's like, oh, copy that. It was a rabbit. Cool. That's what goes into the thing. Found rabbit, right? And then there were times we show up and you see 2 human beings on site. Now, they were our leadership doing test exercises for quality control. But when you're driving down the street with an alarm in your head and you see 2 human beings, you're starting to ramp up. And as soon as they see the car come across the hill is when they come across the radio and authenticate that this is now an exercise. So, don't shoot them for real type thing, right?
Please don't.
But but it's something to that. You're right. When the more sensitive you are, and I love making this distinction. Paranoia is if nothing ever happens to me and I always think it will.
Yeah.
Trauma or PTSD is when something has happened to me, then it's well within my right to be sensitive to it to ensure it doesn't happen again. I'd be a damn fool not to. I'd be a fool not to. So I love that radar. Is that a Rich Life copyright? Because if not, I will be using it to talk about.
You can borrow it for sure. Yeah.
I love it.
Well, and the other kind of cool thing is that that FAST system too, it's made of thought just like our intellectual minds. And I think that all thoughts are trying to serve us in some way, whether it's protection, whether it's safety. And so that I saw in a lot of your videos, you talk about how those thoughts are trying to help you, that these reactions are meant to serve you. And when you see it that way, you're not as scared of them.
Yeah. It's like, again, the fire alarm. When my fire alarm goes off, I should first be looking for smoke. Once I've identified there's no fire or no smoke, then maybe I should just look at changing the batteries.
Yeah.
That's it. No big deal here. It did what it was supposed to do. And again, that's part of the destigmatizing of it that I think happens when you understand that life works from the inside out. I think that removes a lot of the stigmatisms that we have around these talks. But when I believed something was wrong with my system, and that is why I was experiencing this, that made it very hard to see what was in front of me.
Oh yeah, because when you can be woken up by that fire alarm, and they like, okay, we need to change the battery. But then you could also be like, that freaking fire alarm, and then and just like have anger, have all of these thoughts. Your intellectual mind can take over and grab onto this. And just like you talked about, like then it becomes something that you're experiencing, and you are having that illusion of your consciousness making it real.
Yeah. Like I'm not, again, for me, the way I would say, I explain this is sitting in the comfort of my own home, me getting worked up about my deployment in Iraq isn't got nothing to do with my deployment in Iraq.
Yeah.
It's got everything to do with what I'm thinking currently about my deployment in Iraq. What I'm thinking at this moment, oh, it was bad. That shouldn't have happened to me. I got a problem. This will always be. That's what I'm trying to get over. That's what's causing me my suffering. I'm past Iraq. Iraq is gone. That's over. Like, again, I'm retired now. I'm sitting in the safety of my own home right now. I'm not being shot at. I'm not being bombed on. I'm not on the streets as a kid anymore. I'm not walking past, people misusing drugs. I'm not. So when I talk about it from this space, it should come out different. I'm starting to see, like anytime I've ever been in conflict, like whether it was a fight, whether we were in shootouts, whatever the case may be, there wasn't much thinking during those. It was just movement, right? A lot of yelling, contact right, or this or that, like a lot of yelling of commands and things like that. But it wasn't much, like you said, all right, there is a tiger. I must. That didn't happen, right? But there are a lot of other things that didn't happen. I never thought about what the effects of what I was going through while I was going through it.
Yeah.
And like running and doing ducking and all, you're not thinking I'm going to die. You're just doing what you have to do. And then I would notice when we would get back to after exercises or after whatever convoys, once we got back into the green zone, as we call it, or the safe zone, then all those thoughts start rushing in. What could have happened? Yeah. And then it gets all kind of scary. I don't even know if the mind can do both of those at the same time. And what I mean by that is be safe and unsafe at the same time. Because if I'm unsafe, the mind has just got me in react mode. But when I am safe, whether I believe it or not, then the mind is free to think the shit it wants to think. And that's when I get into, oh, this could have happened to me. Oh, I could have died. Oh, this could have, and that compounding on my mental fortitude wears me thin. So to me, I think it's impossible for the system to work that way. Meaning if you can sit down and scare the shit out of yourself with what you think about a memory, you are actually safe at that moment.
Wow.
Because I mean, again, think about the times you were unsafe. You're just responding. You're too in the moment of trying to get to safety, to calculate, to overthink. Nobody overthinks in a gunfight. Nobody overthinks in bombings. Nobody overthinks through a sexual assault. Nobody overthinks through getting beat up or jumped on. Nobody overthinks through those. Once you get to a safe spot after experiencing it, then you pick up the overthinking of the thing.
Yeah.
But the mind can't be safe and unsafe at the same time. It just doesn't work that way.
It's that fast brain takes over. And then the top brain just says, I don't need you. And it can do that.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it can. Yes, it can.
It's like, bye.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, again, it's a fascinating thing, and I don't want to make it seem like I want to discredit all of the medical intelligence and the knowledge and the education and stuff that's out there, because that's in no way what I'm saying. But I think there's a way to have the conversation about these issues that doesn't come with the pressure or the charge of something being wrong with me or me having to adhere to being broken for this to be handled. I don't need to think I'm broken when I'm already dealing with something that's just bad enough by itself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need no extra thoughts. Like, if I'm dealing with the death alone is big enough in magnitude that I don't need to add hours of overthinking and complicating with a whole bunch of other stuff that really isn't relevant at the moment, because the death in itself is big enough.
And it also speaks a little bit to the fact that we have that innate wellness within us, that a lot of people are convinced in their intellectual minds that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And wow,
it makes sense though. Again, it makes sense because it's not reinforced in your environment.
Yeah.
That you are well, that you're okay. It's not the popular or the status quo, so to speak. It seems like everything from outside in is trying to distinctively say you're not well, because then that point you will need or have to buy some of the products and services that exist.
Yeah.
But I get why people think they're broken. And again, it's been fed to us for decades. For me, 4.5 now, decades. It's just not true though.
Well, and our mind kind of helps in that illusion too, because the way that our consciousness operates, it makes it real. And we think that that horrible feelings that we have, are a confirmation that we're unwell.
Mm-hmm.
And not a confirmation of the system actually working.
Yes.
The feelings are only telling us about our thinking, and that if we're feeling horrible, then we should suspect what's going on up here.
Absolutely. If you're having horrible thoughts, it would make sense you feel horrible.
Yeah.
If you're having sad thoughts, it would make sense that you feel sad. If you hear something funny, you laugh. It ain't even rocket science, as they say. It's just how it works. And sometimes even when people say, well, I didn't have a thought. Well, there are subconscious thoughts.
Yeah.
But I love saying there's a difference in the power of thought, meaning the universal energy of creation, and my content of what I think. So the content of what I think may derive from the experiences that I've had. But that doesn't mean, again, that they're true. So I'm as an article coming out, I write for this one publication, and it's about overcoming fear and how the mind can actually make life seem a lot scarier than it really is.
Oh, yeah.
And I use the analogy of if me and you were going to the movies. And so we decide, hey, we're going to go see this new thriller. We're excited about it. We square up details. We get to the movie theater, buy our seats, get our overpriced popcorn, candy, soda, we're in the movie theater. Well, not commercials, but previews go. Now we're in the movie. Halfway in there somewhere, when the movie hit a scary spot, you see somebody run out, a couple people scream. I got my soda all over my shirt now because it scared me. You didn't waste your popcorn. For that to happen, a lot of things had to be forgotten. Me and you had to forget we drove there. We had to forget that no actors were actually harmed by filming the movie. We had to forget that we actually were excited to come watch the scary movie. Yeah. Right? So there was a lot of things we forgot. And when we forget certain things, the things that are in front of us can appear very real. And so I use that analogy to say, when you forget that you are connected to the universal mind, which is the creative energy of life, when you forget that, I could see how something in front of you scares the shit out of you. Yeah. When you forget that you have a resilience, an innate resilience built into you, that it's going to lead you and guide you through the most difficult of your times, if you can hear it. When you forget that exists, of course what's in front of you can scare you. Right? And so it's not so much in the game for me of trying to fix what's on the projector. It's just letting you know it's being projected. Yeah. Right? It's just letting you know you're the one. And if you could just remember, oh, we in the movies. Whew. Oh man, that's all right. We in the movie there. I mean, I ain't even talking 3D. Now 3D is coming off the screen, right? But not even 3D. A 2D movie screen. I've seen people jump back and duck their heads not to get hit by something. It doesn't come out the screen. That's how powerful the mind is, though. Again, when you forget certain things.
And they call that suspension of disbelief when people forget that they place aside, but they do that in order to enjoy the movie, to be fully invested in the movie. Well, and that's kind of an interesting piece, because there's an element to this where you can remember that you're in the movie, and then you go back into the movie, and then you can enjoy it. You are in that fully. I think Michael Neal, who was what we were talking about earlier, he says that it's kind of like this haptic system that you can feel the touch, you can taste, you have feelings too. Yeah. It creates feelings for you.
Oh yeah,
based off of your thinking. It's so good at it.
Very.
Yeah.
Very. And if you want to test it, you ever played a virtual reality game?
Yeah.
Or did a virtual reality? Like, I remember putting on the Oculus, and looking in, and the first scene that came up on the Oculus was my feet on the edge of a tall story building. And I literally can almost feel like I'm about to shit my pants. Like, I could feel it instantly. But I knew I put the goggles on. I was in my daughter's home when I put them on my head. Yeah. I knew where I was, but the moment that flashed, instantly I could feel everything as if I literally was standing on top of a story building with my toes hanging off. The problem is, it just wasn't true. Even though all of that felt that way. I mean, the stomach, everything, that was real. But what I was believing wasn't. So, yeah.
It's just so funny that we can scare ourselves with that
Most definitely
power of thoughts, and we do it so innocently. Like, sometimes I'll look back and at things that I didn't see as clear as I saw now, and you can regret. You're like, man, what? This whole time. This whole time.
Yeah. I used to say I wish I knew this when I was younger, but I'm glad I know it now. That's what I'm saying. I'm glad I know it now. And that's why I kind of hang my hat. It's I've learned the mind typically has two functions. It's going to, one, create solutions for your freedom, or two, it's going to create narratives to keep you captive. Your choice. Your choice. And that's free will for me. I can use this gift to create solutions for my freedom from suffering, from pain, from this, from that. Or I can create narratives that'll keep me in captivity of my suffering, of my pain, of whatever my trauma was at the time. The choice is mine. Always the choice is mine. Whether I know it or not, whether I can feel it or not, whether I see it or not. The choice is mine.
What I've been exploring a lot lately is what's in between the lines of that story, whether it's the freedom story or the captive story. And that what's underneath, what the pages that it's written on is love, is mind, is that intelligence that gives us life.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the cool part, is that it's okay if the story is one of victimhood, because it's still written in this vibrant life. And people forget that, like you talked about. They get disconnected with it, and that's okay. It's all right. it's cool to be connected with it. It's cool to see it. It's cool to know that no matter what the ink says on the page, that you have underneath something beautiful. I can't even use words to describe like the power, the transformational nature of what's underneath.
Mm-hmm.
It's so accepting, and it's accepting of you doing whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah. And that's what's so funny about there's this one story of a thief who went to got it caught for stealing, and rather than go to jail, they sent them to a monastery where he had to study with the monk, and he became enlightened and all of those things, right? And I guess after a year or two, and I'm probably hacking the joke all the way up, but this is kind of how I heard it. He left to go back to stealing because he really felt he'll be good now that he cleared his mind, right? The principles are just the principles. They just work. They just are. They just explain how the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
How someone uses it that's going to be on them. And some people will take a principle and use it for bad. But again, it's how they used it. I mean, some of the most horrible criminals in criminal history or criminal justice world were geniuses.
Yeah.
To run a criminal empire, again, not attempting to glorify it, but to run a business in which is against the law means the police will always be on your back. Your enemies are always going to be on your back, and you are convincing other people to join. Like, that's a genius. Like, if you can make all that work, because that's a lot of mess in one pot, right? If you can make all that work where you get to live an extravagant life of sports cars, it's like, wait a minute, what? Now, I personally say ill-advised use of the power of God, That's me, though. But, man, is it just true? It's just true. Like, those type of people don't have a lot on their mind when it comes to how they show up and respond when it comes to their drug or wrong activity. Again, they may not classify it that way or look at it that way. But again, it's how powerful those minds are, and what they're capable of doing. And that's anything.
I think too that I think they talk about how if you see the principles and you see what's underneath, that you don't need like commandments or anything like that. You don't need the thou shalt not kill, because it feels really crappy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you do commit some of these like crimes and atrocities, that it probably feels really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their guiding emotion. That's the intelligence of the system. And that's why we don't need the commandments if they are connected with their wellness.
Yeah. Most would say that, I feel this way because I'm worried about the police getting out. No, it's not. It's not. It's you. It just that didn't resonate with how you're supposed to use that gift or that power. Yeah. I like that. I can see that. Yeah. I really can. I don't know why. I just thought about your wife listening to this and going, see, told you it was a cult. That shit just popped in my head. Like, she's going to listen to this. Go, he even said it. He even said it. It's a cult.
Rob is converting you. Watch out.
That's funny.
Well, one kind of cool realization popped up when I was listening to one of your videos, and you were talking about how in the world of form, like, things disintegrate more slowly, right?
Yeah.
Like like you have the water bottle, and then you were talking about how you'd have to melt it, or and then really it's just kind of transforming. And I'm teaching science to kids, elementary school kids. I go in and teach science, and we're learning about states of matter. And it makes me think of like thought is, and I've heard this before, like, you have the liquid form, the solid form, and the gas form. I've heard that metaphor before, but I was thinking about like the actual atoms, like how the atom structure over here in the solid form, it vibrates, and we can have our thoughts go in here, and they're tightly bound. They don't really move, but they still vibrate. And then they can be, but thoughts are really more like liquid. They take whatever shape, they take up the container.
Yeah.
And then they move, they slide, they flow, the atoms, and they're a little bit more spaced apart. And then in gas, when they're gas, it's like they're super dispersed. They can go whichever way. It's the exact same energy.
Yeah.
But it's being expressed in different ways, and in reality we have the slow expression of water bottles. I have my spray bottle for my dogs. But then we have like thought that can be solid and closed, and it can be gaseous and dissipate.
Yeah, I like that. Science was not one of my best. Science and math weren't my best of school subjects, but I do get invisible. I do get form and formless.
Yeah.
I do see that for something that's invisible, or in a sense gas only, attempting to attach to that is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And all I can use to attach to it is more invisibleness. Like, it's not like I'm going to have to use again my power of creativity to hold on and keep attached to that, versus in the form shape, then I could hold that as long as I want. And even that's going to get tiring at a sense. But yeah, I do know the more and more I can begin to see, it's all, like from even my microphone to the camcorder to the computer, that came from someone's invisible thought pattern that they, through their continued efforts and search, brought it into form.
Yeah.
And now I get to experience it, and that cycle is always rolling. So yeah, I like that a lot.
Well, and I also like how you connect it to the mind within, to that love, the connection, and how this, you said like this mouse is like made of love.
Yeah. It's nowhere it could have came. This I've been trying to learn music for a while, and one of my favorite artists is named Nipsey Hussle. Right.
Okay.
And he was a former gang member in Los Angeles, and he was from this country, Mitra. And he went back, and when he came back, he had a spiritual kind of awakening. Still was a gang member though, and still, but in a much different way. And what he did was he started making music because he realized music came from nowhere. And he said, like, think about it. He was telling the guy who was interviewing him, he's like, think about it. I'm just sitting here and a beat comes into my head. A patterns of sounds comes into my head. I then go to the beat machine and bring them out. No, that's not it. Work on it till it comes out. I write lyrics to it that come from nowhere. Put them together and put this product out, and the whole world sings it. He said, music is spiritual, right? And it was like, whoa, this is one of the biggest gang members that ever lived, right? Like, but even with that, he said the reason he didn't stop being known to the world as a gang member was because he needed gang members to hear that music was spiritual. Like, so he wasn't out in the streets anymore. He was, I mean, now ultimately he was killed by a gang member, but his legacy is that of creating. It was that of changing the environment. It was such an interesting thing that when he died, the world had no clue who he was, but his funeral was at the what was known as the Staples Center, where the Los Angeles Lakers play. Again, this is a LA Street gang member who, when he died, there were politicians, there were civic leaders, there were NBA all-stars, there were there were billionaires. That's who came to his funeral as a result of him seeing how spiritual music really was. And in my mind, all that means to me and what I see was they saw, what I love to say is, they could see it in him. They could see the God in them could see the God in him, and it just connected. Yeah. You know, and that's all it is for me. Like the way I speak, like even today, we get on, hit the button. Like, just for full transparency, I literally had to ask you your name. You know, I had to ask you your name before we started, but that didn't stop anything about us being able to connect, us being able to talk, us being able to laugh. Here I was making even a little joke, in a sense, towards your wife, that you didn't feel like I was, you know, trying to harm her or anything like that. And again, and just 30 minutes ago, I had to ask you your name. So to me, I know there's a difference when love is being the lens in which I see life. Like, I know that now for a fact, man. Like, it's not even a belief anymore. Like, for me, my beliefs are up for grabs. Everything I believe in, that means I'm still learning and researching and trying to know it's true. But there are a few things that I know. I know mind, thought, consciousness is how we have our human experience. And because I know that, it's just like knowing when I walk out the house, the air is going to be there for me to breathe. I know if I can close down the content of my thinking, I'm going to see the humanity in the human being that's standing in front of me. I know that. I know it's in there. I don't care what they're arguing. I don't care how vicious they're saying it. I don't care how disrespectful it's coming out. I know that if I can shut down my thinking, I could see it. And if I could see it, I could smile at it, and it could smile back at me. I know it, right? I ain't believing it anymore. So I don't, you know, that's how I want my experience of it to be, and that's how I love sharing it.
I feel that. I
feel
that. That's awesome. And I don't mean it. We denigrate our language, like,
that's all we got. Yeah,
awesome hot dogs we have.
That's all we got.
This toothpick is awesome.
I had a cherry soda the other day, was to die for it. I was like, no,
it was
not really, but you know what I'm saying. I was hot, it was cold, it worked, but I ain't trying to really go out. I ain't trying to really give it all up for a cherry 7-Up. I'm not. I'm sorry. You know?
No, but it's awesome, and I wish I could say it in the right way that it would encapsulate the feeling of it.
Yeah,
because words can point to the feeling, like, but yeah, like, you can have that deep connection now with anyone, and that gives you so much freedom.
Yep.
Whether there's trauma in your life or challenges, you can be connected with yourself and with the people that are around you in your life.
Yeah. It's a beautiful experience. And
Yeah.
again, just because I love making it as clear as I can, that does not mean I enjoy and love every circumstance or
Yeah.
experience that I have.
Yeah.
It's shitty when family member dies.
Yeah.
It's shitty or difficult when I have financial problems. It's not it's not happy like in a minute I'm going to the vet because like I said, I had a mass removed
Yeah.
from one of my dogs. It's not happy go lucky wondering, all weekend if the tumor was cancerous and we got more work to do. No, that still happens too. But
Yeah.
knowing the truth of who I am, all of those things are a little bit less scarier. I tend to then focus on what I can control and a lot less on what I can't.
Yeah. The is versus what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very good way to put it. I like that. Yeah. The is versus what isn't.
It's Sydney Banks, of
Yeah.
course.
Probably why I like it. Yeah. Love a lot of his stuff.
I mean, you don't be like, oh, that rich guy.
I pretty much love all Sid stuff. So, yeah. All his books are all around everywhere. So,
oh man. Well, you're doing tons of cool like seminars, and I think you have like a group that people can find you at. You're a beautiful human being, by the way. And
thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I see it in our conversation and getting to meet with you and see you also in some of the training videos and so people are seeing that too. I know that they are, and if they want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about trauma, I think you were saying you have a group. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Easiest way to find most of what I do is going to be through the website or my social media, and all of everything pretty much is the same. I tried to keep it super simple, and that's I'm Rob Cook. So I am ROBCOOK.com is the website. At I'm Rob Cook, I am ROBCOOK is all my social media handles. But the Life After Trauma Support Group meets every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific. You can sign up for it on my website. You'll get the Zoom link for it that comes to you automatically. And it's just a free support group. If you are still going through the adverse effects of a traumatic experience, we invite any and everybody to come. We share stories, we talk. It's not a coaching program. It's not a fix your problems. It's just to let you know you're not alone. And that is what I found to be very helpful for people going through hard times. It's just that they know they're not alone.
Yeah.
The other group that I have, I partnered with Mind Fit Life Coaching out of South Africa to start helping teach practitioners and therapists and others how best to lay out this work we do with those who are experiencing trauma. So it's an advocate program where we talk about what it really means to build a safe space. Because again, the people we are interacting with aren't trusting, they're on defense. So how do I get them to hear? And a lot of that is taking care of yourself. Self-care is a huge topic throughout the whole curriculum. And also how to see what we were talking about, that innate health in the person that's sitting in front of me, even if they can't see it. It's super different for me now showing up to a client when I deal with somebody who's had a traumatic experience, starting out knowing they're okay, than it was when I got caught in the narrative that they were telling me. It scared the shit out of me just as much as it was scaring them. And now we all on the phone crying away. But now my tears are in support of getting you to see that you are okay. And so that's what the advocate program is. You can get to all the information again on the website. And if you do that, I don't know when this released, but that program starts April 19th. It's like 2 weeks or 9 days from now or whatever that program is going to start. But yeah, man, that's pretty much all I'm up to. And I'll do that for however long it feels like that's what I'm supposed to do. And then I'll figure out what's next after that.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, thank you again for joining me today.
No, man, thank you. Thank you. Like I said, the moment I saw Rich Life on the screen, I was just like, That is super dope. Like, and then
Yeah.
to find out that's your actual name, it's like,
Yeah.
you can't beat that, man. Yeah, that's what I'm helping people have, a rich life. You know,
Yeah.
and I don't mean that monetarily by finances. I mean it just in your experience, just in the
Yeah.
fabric of your experience. So I appreciate you for letting me be here, man.
Anytime. Thank you for listening to the Rich Life Realization Podcast. May these conversations help you experience your richest life. To contact me about being a guest on the podcast or about coaching, email me richliferealization@gmail.com or text or call 970-716-0075.